Well, welcome back. It's been a while since I've been out and done some location video and photography, so I thought we'll make the effort and get out there. This is actually a video I've been planning for quite a while, but as I said, the weather here in the UK has not been particularly good, and one thing or another, I had a few problems getting out. So finally, the weather's broken, and we've got the conditions that I want for this video. Now, what we're going to do today, we're going to do a video on extended daylight exposures. Now, I'm sure you've seen these sort of shots before with long exposures. I've done lots of them, but normally when it's sort of twilight or getting dark. I've not done any in the middle of the day, but we're going to have a go at this today. Now we need some special bits of equipment, and what we're going to do, we're going to take the camera out. We've got a filter holder on here. This is a professional holder, and we've got a filter that it's a fairly new one out on the market, and the company is High Tech, and the very nice people at High Tech have lent me this filter. It's called a Pro Stop 10, and what it is, it's a 10-stop neutral density filter. So it's very, very dense, and it enables us to take extended exposures, even in bright light. And most people, when they do these videos, go to the beach or involve water. I want to avoid that. I want to try and photograph something that's just very static, but use the long exposure to get some movement in the clouds, which is why it's taken me a while to wait for the correct weather that we need. And it's a slightly windy day and quite a bit of cloud cover, which is not something we're lacking in this country, in the UK. The other thing I'm going to use is a little app on my phone. Now, the reason I'm going to use this just to be laziness, to be honest with you, because we need to obviously calculate the daylight exposure and then extend that to get the correct exposure to compensate for the filter. So I've got an app on my phone here called Long Time Exposure Calculator. It's for the iPhone, but it may be for the Android as well, I'm not sure. But it's a free app, and it's, like I said, it's just a simple way of calculating the exposure. So, for instance, with a 10-stop filter today, if we're shooting outside and it's a 60th of a second exposure, which is probably about right, that's going to give me, with the filter, a 15-second exposure. Okay, so it's quite well. So, and if we drop it down, say, to a quarter of a second, that then drops down to 4 minutes, which is kind of the exposures I'm thinking about doing, and that should give us plenty of time to allow some clouds to roll in and get some nice movement in the shots. So that is the plan, and we're going to go out now. I'm going to give you a location video. I'm going to do that on my iPhone rather than take the big video camera out today, but it does slow me down quite a bit. So I'll give you a bit of footage on location with that. So I'll see you in a little while. Right, well, we're in location. Behind me, you'll see a pillbox, which is a World War II pillbox, and that's what we're going to be photographing in this field. The video might not be as clear as I'd like. We've got quite a few helicopters doing manoeuvres today, and they're making life a bit difficult for recording, but we'll try our best. Now, the problem I've got at the moment is the sun's come out, which isn't ideal because I've got the camera set on 50 ISO and I'm getting a 30th of a second at f/22, which translates to about 30 seconds with the filter on. And it's not really long enough. I need something about at least a minute, maybe 2 minutes for what I want. So hopefully the sun might disappear in a minute. It normally does when you don't want it to. So and we'll get some more shots. But I've got the camera set up. I've actually set the camera up. I've composed my shot. I've focused up on manual focus, set it on manual exposure at f11, and I've taken the filter, put the filter on after I've focused, and then recalculated my exposure. So we'll see what we get. Hopefully the sun will disappear and we'll get some more shots, but in the meantime I'll do a little bit more of a view for you so you can see exactly the setup. Okay, I'm just trying to shield out the wind a little bit so you can hear me. I've got the camera exposing now. I've moved the camera further forward into the shot with a wide-angle lens, which is not my preferred focal length. But the reason I've done it is that I need to point the camera up and really add some drama and show the sky. And to do that, I obviously have to go down low with a wide angle. I've managed to extend my exposure to about 2 minutes. It's overexposing the file a little bit, but we can cope with that. We can recover that in Lightroom, which is always better to overexposure files anyway and pull the exposure. So overall, I think we're getting the shots we need. So we'll next see you back in Lightroom, and we'll see if that is the case. Well, welcome back. This is day 2 on location. As you would have probably seen on the video, I was out here yesterday, struggling a little bit, and I got a couple of images which are okay, but they weren't what I really wanted. So I decided to come back out again today. As you can probably see, the sun is blindingly strong at the moment, but we have got a much more defined clouds today. There's a lot of blue sky and a lot of fast-moving cloud, and the wind is obviously picked up, which is going to help us with what we need. So I'll come out to do the shot again, have another attempt at it. This is location photography, and sometimes the weather just transpires against us, and it really did yesterday. So I decided to just cut my losses and come out again. So I'm just waiting for the sun to go in, and hopefully some clouds on its way over, and we can get this shot in the bag. Okay, I'm still waiting. This is the situation. This is the light at the moment, which is very lovely. But I'm waiting for that lot over there, this cloud bank, which is quite thick, to come over, and hopefully that's going to give me enough time to get the shots I need. And hopefully we'll get it over this side as well, above our pillbox. So that's the plan, that's what I'm waiting for. So a little bit more waiting around, but hopefully it'll be worth it. Okay, so I've done quite a few exposures. The sun's stayed out pretty much all the way through most of them, but I'm still getting about a minute to a minute and a half, which is absolutely fine. And we're getting some nice contrast also from the pillbox as well, from that harsh light. So I'm just changed the position of the camera now, and I've sort of done a wider shot because we've got this lovely, you can see behind me, this lovely field which has been ploughed, and we've got some lovely plough marks in the mud, which is really adding to the composition. So I've gone to a slightly wider focal length to help emphasise that. So again, I'm just exposing now, and I'm going to do a few more frames, and then we should be finished, and we'll get them back into Lightroom and have a look what we got. Well, welcome back. We're now in Lightroom. As you can see from the video, things didn't go quite as smoothly as I would have liked. What I found was when I got back and brought the images back and looked through them, the sky was a little bit lacking in contrast. There wasn't a lot of difference between the light and the darker tones in the picture, and with the long exposure, it just wasn't really picking up the texture that I wanted. So I decided to go back the next day, which was much more successful. But like I said, I left that in the video because it just shows you that with the best will in the world and best planning, it doesn't always work out as you would like, and sometimes you have to resign yourself to going back to the same location again when the weather conditions are more favourable. So that's part and parcel of landscape or location photography. So what we're going to do, I'm going to show you those pictures in a minute, but what I want to do first is to take you through the camera settings again to give you a bit of a refresher of what we did and how we did it. Okay, so we're just going to take you through some of the camera settings used. Tripod and a cable release. Obviously a tripod goes without saying. Cable release is useful if you're using exposures more than say 30 seconds, which I think is the standard on most cameras will go to. Then you're going to need to use bulb mode, or it might be called time mode on your camera, whereby you actually manually time the exposure and you need to lock the exposure, the shutter open. And so a cable release with with a locking mechanism on it is ideal. So that is the first thing you're going to need. Tripod essential, cable release depending on your exposure time and whether you've got a steady finger, but I would definitely recommend that. And also locking the mirror up is another long exposure. If you're doing that, locking the mirror up will help avoid any nasty vibrations. Next thing is the neutral density filter. You're going to need this in daylight. I used a Pro 10, which is made by High-Tech, and it's a 10-stop neutral density filter. There's other makes on the market, obviously. I even heard of some people making their own out of welding mask glass, but you've got to think anything you put in front of the lens is going to deteriorate the quality. Now, how much so depends on your lens, etc. But bear that in mind. So if you're doing a lot of this, I'd recommend stumping up the cash and getting a good quality neutral density filter. So that's the one I used. It's High-Tech. Next thing is a timer. There is a timer on my camera, but sometimes I'll use my iPhone and just keep an eye on that. Even sometimes set the countdown time with an alarm. So that is sometimes almost essential, but depending on the camera again, your camera may well have a little timer on it. Next thing is the extended exposure app. Now, this is not essential, but if you don't want to stand around for hours on end, which I don't, I just want to get on and do my shots, instead of standing there trying to work out your exposure, a little free app that's available on the iPhone is the one I used, and I'm just trying to bring that up as we speak. It's called the Long Time Exposure app. But there's others, quite a few on there, and I'm sure that if you've got an Android, there is something similar. And it just means that you can do your calculated exposure, and then you obviously dial that in depending on what filter you're using, and it will tell you the exposure without having to stand there obviously calculating it. So perhaps a bit lazy of me, but like I said, it just saves a lot of waiting around trying to calculate stuff. The next thing is the settings. Now, you want to use manual focus. Okay, what I do is I go in, I find my my position and compose my picture. I will focus up manually, and then I'll put the filter in place. The reason for that is, if you've ever not seen a 10-stop neutral density filter, you can't see anything through it. So you need to focus first. So focus first and set filter on. Okay, so bulb mode, I've already slightly covered this. If you're using longer exposures, you may need to put the camera into bulb mode. If not, and I'm going to touch on this in a moment, if you don't need the long exposures, which I thought I would do, you'll get away with perhaps 15 seconds, 30-second exposure. All depends on how fast the motion's moving in your scene and the kind of effect you want. Right, we're back in Lightroom. I'm going to show you some of the samples that I shot. I'm going to start off unusually with the finished image. This is the finished picture that I created, and you can see a lovely sky is moving in a very fluid motion across the scene, and we've got a little bit of blowing around the top of this tree, which actually I quite like. So it turned out really well. One thing I would point out, and this might be obvious to you, a lot of people photograph water and stuff with these daylight extended exposures, and you get some beautiful effects, and that's all great. Because I didn't want to touch on that, I wanted to get away from. I'm always shooting water. I wanted to do some stuff with clouds. I had to obviously wait for the right type of clouds and enough movement in them, so a little bit of a breeze. It's actually quite windy on this day, so that will all alter your exposure, as we'll touch on in a minute. But obviously, if the cloud is moving, say, towards camera into the camera lens or from behind you, that creates some very, very dynamic looking pictures, and it's worth trying to pursue that kind of direction. Obviously, it's not always possible. With this image, this was really the best angle to capture this pillbox on. So for me to go back, I'd have to wait until the wind was in the right direction with the right clouds, and that could take days, weeks, months, or however long. So, but it probably would be worth it. It just depends how patient you're prepared to be for that shot. So I'm just going to quickly show you a cross-section of some of the images that we shot and the exposures used. This was day one, and you can see the cloud here. This is the 30-second exposure, and bear in mind I was looking, or thought I probably would need about 1 minute to 2 minutes for the sort of effect that I wanted. But you have to remember, it all depends on how fast the mover is in the clouds or the water, and also the effect that you're looking for. So it's a bit of a juggling act, and obviously with digital, we can test these things. We don't need to shoot loads and loads and loads of images like in the film days. We can just do a few quick tests and see what we're getting and the sort of effect we need, and then just adjust the exposure accordingly. So this one was done on 30 seconds. The problem is with this day was there wasn't a lot of contrast in the sky, and therefore when I started to extend my exposures, this one was 63 seconds, just over a minute. It's just a wash of white. So I realised that I wasn't going to get the effect I wanted, and I did wait around quite a long time hoping a bit of more of a break in the cloud would come over, but it didn't happen. So the following day I went back, as I said, and we got a lot more blue sky and a lot more cloud that was broken, and the wind picked up, so it was moving quite quickly. This was an 83-second exposure, so nearly 1.5 minutes, and you can see we've got some lovely blurring, but again, it's a little bit too blurred for this particular sky, in my opinion. So I decided to start to draw back on the exposure. This one was 15 seconds, and we're still getting that lovely movement, but there's still some definition in the clouds. And then finally, this one was at 8 seconds. So in my opinion, I believe that this one 8 seconds or the 15-second exposure, somewhere between the two, depending on the shape of the cloud and what I had during the exposure, will be perfect. So it's just a matter of timing my exposures right. And I waited around about an hour or so at this location. It was a lovely day, and it was just an enjoyable experience. So get out there, and you need to, just as I said, just do a few tests depending on the look you're looking for, and see which exposure is going to be ideal for that. Well, I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you'll get out there and give this a try. It's great fun, and use all sorts of manner of subjects that would benefit from these long exposures, especially in daylight, when sometimes the light, I wouldn't normally go out and shoot personally this time of day, this time of year. The light is a bit too harsh and bland sometimes for landscapes, but with this filter, it transforms the landscape and gives you some really lovely effects. So get out and give it a go. I'll catch you on the next video. Cheers.